You know, Al, it's interesting. It's been almost 4 years to the day where David and I got together with this crazy idea. Hey, let's get a live interview together and talk about the corporate tax bill of 2017.
And here we are today talking about corporate tax again with David Altman.
David, thanks again for joining us today. You know, ever since we got together for that live interview 4 or 5 years ago, we had more questions and answers. And ever since then, we've learned so much about the impacts of the corporate tax bill of 2017. Would you mind sharing kind of an overview of what the corporate tax bill means and the impacts to employee moving?
Three sets of tax credits. A lot of people refer to as the three stimulus payments. Some of the stimulus payments were made in 2020, but kind of right towards the end. The second stimulus payment was made very early in 2021. So, one was kind of like mid-2020. The second one was made very early in 2021. And the third stimulus payment was made in the middle of 2021. So they were all definitely made within a year of each other, but some cross tax years. And this is where the complexity comes up for the mobility industry. When a company pays or a government agency pays to relocate someone, to move someone, those dollars add up on the employee's W-2 as taxable income. This is such a big issue. So when people say, how did the new tax law affect the mobility or relocation industry? It was the ability to have people who may have been entitled to three stimulus, packages or checks. Maybe they got one, maybe they got phased out of another, maybe they got nothing. So that's the biggest impact on corporate mobility, is those three sets of stimulus payments that were literally released in the last year.
Interesting. So, David, what do we know now that we didn't know then?
What we definitely know now is there's a significant number of employees who moved in tax year either 2020 or 2021 that because taxable income was added to their W-2, they absolutely positively lost thousands and thousands of tax credits. What we also know now is many companies did reimburse those employees for the loss of those credits, which I don't want to say is good or bad. It's a company policy choice. And we also know other companies didn't. What I love about this is its policy. In other words, the law says you deserve a credit. It's up to the company to decide, because they moved them, did we force you to lose that credit? And because we may have forced you to lose that credit, do we want to, quote, keep you whole? The philosophies I've heard from companies is a lot of companies said, look, we thank our workers greatly. We want to maintain them as best as possible. If we did something that forced them to lose thousands of dollars of credits, we're going to give them that money. Other companies, their position is, hey, we kept you fully employed. We never reduced your salary. A lot of companies, during those tough times in 2020 and 21, gave everybody like a 20% pay cut. A lot of people only earned 80% of their salary, and that was tough. But those companies who said, you know what, we kept you 100% paid, we don't feel you were entitled to the credit, and this is kind of an interesting concept, but I'll kind of agree with it. If you were fully employed and made your regular good old-fashioned paycheck, did you really need those stimuluses? The stimuluses were designed to help people that lost money, lost their jobs, needed that extra income to pay that monthly rent payment. If you were still fully employed, you could argue you maybe didn't need that stimulus, and that's some other company's philosophy. So it really comes down to corporate culture. What's your culture? Is it to view you as, hey, we kept you fully employed, we don't need to give you any more extra money? Or is your culture, you know what, if we added some income to your W-2 and you lost some credits, we're going to give it to you? It's 100% a policy decision. Myself being in the tax area, my goal is to make sure corporations make an informed decision. There's no right or wrong answer, but just make an informed, intelligent decision.
If I was sitting in the HR seat, relocation, finance manager, and receiving all this information, what should I be doing next? What would you do if you were me?
Again, a great question. The first thing I would do is really sit down with all the stakeholders in the organization and decide, what is your policy going to be? Is it to keep your people whole? And again, I have the quotes around the word whole. or not.
Hey, Al, so what do you think about what David had to say about company culture?
Well, it's amazing. On LinkedIn, everyone talks about inclusion and snacks and pizza, and many don't even realize that there's way more to it, to a good company culture.
That's hilarious, Al. It's kind of like, yeah, we'll let you go play ping pong, eat snacks, play Nintendo Wii in the break room all you want, but when it comes to an employee move, let's not really put too much thought or effort into it. When in fact an employee move is really when a employee's first impressions are made on a company's culture. So you're absolutely right.
All right, sorry, I'm gonna chime in here real quick. I have a question for you, David. So, what type of impact does work from home have on company policy and the future of relocation?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question, because actually when you said what's the impact of the tax law, and I kind of said, hey, it's all about those credits, those stimulus payments.
Right.
To be honest, the second biggest part about the new tax law is truly that working from home. A lot of companies, it's called Nexus. Nexus means you typically have a physical presence in a location. A lot of companies don't have Nexus in certain states because, their employee lives maybe in one state, but they work in another state, so they don't need a presence in that other state. Well, when you've got employees arguably working from home all over the country, in fact, what I've seen personally, I have a lot of friends who have actually moved and sold their houses in high-cost areas and bought new houses, and for lack of a better word, in the middle of nowhere, because they could buy a lot more houses.
Sure.
The housing market was hot. They sold their house, I'll just pick on the Northeast. They sold their house in the Northeast and took advantage of all those great higher home sale prices. They're like, yay, I made a lot of profit. And then they moved to a much lower cost area in a different state or a different part of the country.
They're in Montana, being Yellowstone, right?
There you go, exactly. Those employees may end up moving to one of those no-tax states or low-tax states. However, their company doesn't have Nexus there, and it's a challenge because the employee is always taxed where you live. So if you get relocated to Montana, and Montana does have a tax, you now owe Montana tax, and your employer may say, we've never had a person in Montana before. We don't even know how to withhold Montana tax in our payroll department. Now they have to figure out, how do I withhold Montana tax? How do I achieve Nexus in Montana? How does the employee do a tax return in Montana? But then if they do travel now back to the main office, again, I'll make up a state, Massachusetts, let's say they're in Boston, that's also a challenge. So without question, people now living and working in different states or working remotely in a different state than their company's kind of normal office is definitely a challenge. The good news is there are tax experts out there who can deal with that, but it's definitely a new tax issue that's arisen because of the pandemic.
So Al, we were just talking about this in our last episode. With more people working from home and relocating to areas without a home base, it could or already have created problems for corporates who don't have Nexus where the employees are relocated to.
Correct. It could lead to the potential of more regional business hubs, or companies could shift their policy and require employees to come back to work at the office.
Right? And there's the companies out there that understand it. And in today's climate where there's a labor shortage, it gets very, very competitive. That stuff kind of matters. So,
Martin and Al, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. In the past, we were all lucky just to have a job. So companies kind of did what they did. It is what it is. Hey, you're lucky. We're promoting you. We're relocating you to this great place. You sell your house. You make a profit. But today, in today's environment, you don't really want to lose people. So I think it's more important than ever that all these tax issues be fleshed out, because companies don't want to lose people. That is for sure. Great point.
Wow, what a show. Covered so many topics, from the overview of corporate tax bill, what we know now and what we didn't know then, implications of working from home, and Nexus. So Martin, what are your thoughts?
His comments about leaving heavily populated and expensive areas to remote, affordable areas were spot on. We do an annual migration report, and we can substantiate that in last year's report. I appreciated his comments about company culture. It's often overlooked and absolutely critical to the success of a new hire or existing hire that needs to relocate for work. The purpose of the live interview 4 years ago was about education and corporate tax role and relocation, which is what the purpose of today's episode was as well. I believe, or at least hope, that folks come out with a better understanding of corporate tax and how policy and decisions are made as a result of tax implications.
Thanks again, Dave.